The clock on my desk read 11:42 p.m. I stared at the dark window of my home office, taking a sip of lukewarm coffee. The house was quiet. Too quiet. My wife, Victoria, was currently at the Grand Hyatt Ballroom, accepting an executive award for Apex Innovations. She told me to stay home because someone needed to keep an eye on our infrastructure. In reality, she just didn't want her husband, the guy in hoodie and jeans, ruining her pristine public image. My phone lit up on the desk. It was a text message from Victoria. "Don't wait up. The after-party is running late." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the glass. I typed out a reply. "How was the gala? Did the investors like the new pitch for Project Titan?" Three dots appeared, floated for a moment, and vanished. No reply came. I put the phone down with a sigh, rubbing the back of my neck. 5 years. For 5 years, I had locked myself in this room, writing every single line of code for Project Titan. I built the architecture, fixed the bugs, and created a cloud software platform that was currently valued at $40 million. Victoria was the face of the company. She handled the suits, the media, and the board. I was content staying in the dark as long as we were building our future together. Then my dual monitors flashed bright red. A loud, piercing chime echoed through my quiet office. I leaned forward instantly, my heart dropping into my stomach. "What the hell?" I muttered to myself. A high-priority security override was executing inside our system. That was impossible. Only 2 people held master access to the core server of Project Titan. Me and Victoria. I grabbed my mouse, my fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard. I pulled up the system terminal and forced a live user audit. "Come on, pull up," I whispered, watching lines of green text scroll across the black screen. The security log popped open. User ID, vendor thing. Action, mass data extraction, core source code. Status, in progress, 45% complete. I froze. Victoria's personal administrator account was currently bypassing our encrypted firewall and downloading the entire master repository of Project Titan. "Why are you accessing the source code from a gala, Victoria?" I asked the empty room, my throat suddenly dry. I opened a secondary command prompt to track the active network session. I needed to see where the data was going. My fingers pounded the keys, running a real-time IP traceback script I had built for cyber attacks. The progress bar hit 100%. The target IP address appeared on screen, accompanied by an encrypted server location tag. Destination IP, 192.168.44.102. Registered domain, Mercer Tech Enterprises, main data center. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, spilling cold brown liquid across my wooden desk. I didn't bother to clean it up. I couldn't move. Mercer Tech. Julian Mercer. Julian was Victoria's ex-fiancé. He ran a rival tech firm that had been bleeding money for 2 straight years. He was arrogant, aggressive, and currently facing a public bankruptcy hearing. 3 months ago, Victoria had mentioned his name over dinner, suggesting we buy out his failing firm. I had refused, showing her that Julian's business was a hollow shell built on bad debt. She had agreed with me that night. Or so I thought. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. She wasn't just checking a file. She was transferring our entire trade secret, the proprietary algorithm that powered Apex Innovations, directly into Julian Mercer's private servers. My phone buzzed on the desk. Victoria's name flashed across the screen. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay level, and swiped to answer. "Hello," I said. "Ethan." Victoria's voice came through the speaker. Music and loud laughter echoed in the background. She sounded entirely unbothered, her voice smooth and polished. "Did you see my text? I'm going to be really late." "Victoria," I said slowly, looking at the blinking red terminal in front of me. "Where are you right now?" "I told you I'm at the gala," she snapped, a hint of annoyance creeping into her tone. "I'm talking with prospective clients." "Why are you calling? Is something wrong with the house?" "I just got a security alert on my monitor," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Someone is logged into your admin account right now." There was a sharp pause on the line. The background noise seemed to faint slightly, as if she had taken a step away from the crowd. "Oh," she said, her tone suddenly distant. "It's probably just an automatic backup. Don't worry about it." "It's not an automatic backup, Victoria," I said, gripping the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. "It's a full source code extraction. And it's routing directly to a server owned by Mercer Tech." Silence hung over the line for 3 long seconds. When Victoria spoke again, the fake sweetness was completely gone. Her voice was cold, sharp, and businesslike. Ethan, you need to go to sleep. What are you talking about? I demanded, standing up from my chair. Julian Mercer is stealing our software. Did someone hack your phone? Did someone steal your credentials? Nobody stole anything, Victoria said plainly. Julian and I are working on a deal. Mercer Tech needs infrastructure support, and Apex needs international distribution. It's a strategic alignment. A strategic alignment? I yelled, my voice cracking in the dark room. You gave him our core IP without a board vote? Without telling me? I built that code, Victoria. That is 5 years of my life. You built it because I gave you the company to build it in, she snapped back, her voice like ice. You sit in that dark room playing engineer while I handle the real world. Julian has contacts in London and Tokyo. He can take us global overnight. He's bankrupt, Victoria. He's using you. Julian is a visionary, she said, her words cutting through me like a knife. He knows how to build an empire. You just know how to write scripts. Go to bed, Ethan. We'll talk about this in the morning when you calm down. Click. The line went dead. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the dark screen. The silence of the house settled over me once more, heavy and suffocating. I looked back at my monitors. The transfer was complete. 100%. Julian Mercer now had everything. My wife had handed him the keys to our kingdom, treating me like an unpaid worker who didn't deserve a say. I sat back down in my chair. The shock began to fade, replaced by a cold, sharp stillness deep inside my chest. She thought I was just an engineer who sat in a dark room. She forgot who held the root access. I opened a hidden directory on my primary drive and brought up a file I hadn't opened since we incorporated the company. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I leaned over my keyboard and began to type. The front door clicked open at 2 a.m. I sat in the dim light of the kitchen island, nursing a glass of ice water. Victoria walked in, her high heels clicking softly against the marble floor. She smelled of expensive floral perfume and expensive champagne. You're still up? She asked, setting her designer handbag on the counter. She didn't look at me as she unbuttoned her coat. I thought I told you to go to sleep. I couldn't sleep, I said quietly, watching her movements. I was thinking about Project Titan. She let out a faint, dismissive sigh. Ethan, please. It's late. Can we not talk about work right now? It's always work when it benefits you, Victoria, I replied, keeping my tone perfectly level. You gave our source code to Julian Mercer tonight. Victoria froze for a fraction of a second before turning around to face me. Her face was completely smooth, completely composed. 5 years of dealing with corporate boards had made her an expert actor. We discussed this on the phone, she said, leaning against the counter with her arms crossed. It's a strategic move. Julian has capital and global connections. Julian Mercer is bankrupt, I said, looking straight into her eyes. I ran the financial audit on Mercer Tech last month. He's underwater by $30 million. Why are you handing our company's crown jewel to a man who is drowning? Victoria's phone buzzed on the counter between us. The screen lit up with a notification banner. Julian, thanks for tonight, Vic. The core data loaded perfectly. See you at breakfast. I looked at the screen, then back up at her. She didn't even bother to hide it or flip the phone face down. Julian is not drowning, Victoria said, her voice dropping into an icy, authoritative register. He's restructuring. And unlike you, he understands how the real world operates. You build code in a bubble, Ethan. You don't understand valuation, expansion, or influence. I understand that Project Titan is 50% mine, I said. I built the architecture from nothing while you were still trying to raise seed money. Victoria laughed, a short, sharp sound that had zero warmth in it. You built the engine, Ethan. I built the vehicle. Without me, your code would be sitting in a private folder on a server in our garage gathering dust. I am the CEO of Apex Innovations. You are the chief architect. Know your place. I stared at her, feeling a cold, quiet stillness wash over me. The pain from 2 hours ago was completely gone. In its place was absolute clarity. My marriage hadn't failed tonight. It had ended a long time ago. I had just been too blind to see it. So what happens now? I asked calmly. You just give him our tech and pretend we're a big happy family? Victoria walked over to her handbag, reached inside, and pulled out a sleek leather folder. She tossed it onto the kitchen island right in front of my water glass. Sign this, she said. I looked down at the document. The header read, Corporate Restructuring and Equity Redistribution Agreement. What is this? I asked, flipping open the first page. It's a formal update to our corporate structure, Victoria replied, picking up her phone and typing a fast reply to Julian. It reallocates founder equity to accommodate incoming institutional investment. Your 30% stake will be converted into a non-voting advisory grant, and your founder stock will be transferred back to the core treasury. You want me to surrender my voting rights and my ownership, I said, reading the bolded clauses. You're stripping me of my own company. I'm optimizing our leadership, she corrected without looking up from her screen. Julian's investors won't back Apex if an engineer with no business background holds veto power over the IP. It's a standard clause. And if I refuse to sign? Victoria put her phone down and looked at me with cold, detached eyes. If you refuse, the board will vote to remove you as chief architect on Monday. I hold 51% of the active board seats, Ethan. You can sign this and stay on as a well-paid consultant, or you can walk away with nothing at all. Either way, Julian gets the technology and Apex moves forward. I see, I said softly. Don't be emotional about this, she added, her tone softening just a fraction, though her eyes remained hard. We're adults. We built a massive business together, but the business has grown beyond you. Sign the papers over the weekend, and we can present a united front at the tech summit on Thursday. I looked down at the contract in my hands. The legal terms were harsh, designed to completely lock me out of my own creation while transferring full execution power to her and Julian. If I fought her right here at the kitchen table, she would use her board majority to lock me out of the building by sunrise. She would change the server access, revoke my encryption keys, and scrub my name from the patents before I could even hire a lawyer. I needed time. I needed Marcus to pull the legal triggers, and I needed Sophia to isolate the system backups before Victoria realized what was happening. I closed the folder slowly and smoothed the cover with my palm. I'll review it, I said, looking up at her with a passive expression. I'll read through the clauses tomorrow morning. Victoria blinked, clearly surprised that I hadn't argued further or thrown a scene. A faint, triumphant smile touched the corners of her lips. She thought she had broken me. She thought I was just a defeated husband falling in line to save what was left of his pride. That's very sensible of you, Ethan, she said, picking up her handbag. I knew you'd see reason eventually. I'm going to take a shower. Don't stay up too late. I won't, I said. I have a lot of work to do tomorrow. She walked down the hallway toward the master bedroom, her heels echoing against the hard floor until her door shut with a quiet click. I sat alone in the quiet kitchen. I pulled out my phone, unlocked my private messaging app, and pulled up Marcus Reed's contact. Ethan, Marcus, are you awake? The reply came back almost instantly. Marcus, always. Did she bring home the Mercer agreement? Ethan, worse. She wants me to sign over my voting rights by Monday. Pull the original corporate charter and meet me at the office at 6 a.m. Bring Sophia. Marcus, are we triggering the protocol? I looked back at the closed leather folder sitting on the kitchen counter, then at the lingering scent of Victoria's perfume in the air. Ethan, we're triggering the protocol. Secure everything. The glass doors of Apex Innovations opened silently as I stepped into the basement secure server room at 5:50 a.m. The building was empty, the quiet air humming with the steady whir of cooling fans. Standing near the central terminal were Marcus Reed, our head of legal, and Sophia Chin, my lead software developer. You look like hell, Ethan, Marcus said, stepping forward. He handed me a warm paper cup of black coffee. Did she give you the papers? She gave me an ultimatum, I said, taking a sip. Sign over my voting rights and founder stock by Monday, or get forced out by the board. She wants to turn my tech over to Julian Mercer. Sophia tapped her laptop screen sharply. It's worse than that, Ethan. Look at this access log. I walked over to her desk, leaning in close. What am I looking at, Sophia? Victoria didn't just transfer the source code last night, Sophia said, pointing her index finger at a series of time-stamped network entries. She gave Mercer Tech full administrator clearance 3 nights ago. Julian's engineering team in London has been mirroring our primary production database for 72 hours. 72 hours? I repeated, my blood turning cold. She lied to my face all week while they scraped our entire infrastructure. Every customer record, every proprietary encryption key, every pipeline, Sophia said, her voice filled with anger. They took it all. She cleared the transfer protocols personally from her private tablet. I knew she was reckless, but this is corporate suicide, Marcus said, crossing his arms. He pulled a thick leather-bound document from his briefcase and laid it flat on the metal desk. Ethan, we need to talk about Section 9 of your original founder agreement. I looked down at the faded yellow pages. Section 9? That's the emergency preservation clause. It's much more than that, Marcus said, flipping directly to the final page and pointing to a paragraph stamped with a red corporate seal. When you and Victoria incorporated Apex 5 years ago, you insisted on writing the original intellectual property framework yourself. Victoria signed it without reading the fine print because back then she trusted you completely. What does the clause say, Marcus? I asked, looking up at him. It establishes that Project Titan's intellectual property is not owned by Apex Innovations as a corporation, Marcus explained clearly. It is leased to Apex by you, the creator, under a conditional usage license. If the underlying code is transferred, sold, or shared with an unauthorized third party without unanimous board consent, which requires your vote, the licensing agreement instantly terminates. Which means you hold the master override key, Marcus replied, his eyes dead serious. Section 9 contains a mandatory fail-safe protocol. The moment you declare an unauthorized IP breach, two things happen automatically. First, a global recall command is issued across all network servers, wiping active deployment scripts worldwide. Second, all corporate bank accounts, physical assets, and proprietary holdings registered under Apex are immediately frozen and revert to your personal asset trust pending federal arbitration. Sophia gasped softly, looking back and forth between us. Wait, if Ethan triggers the recall, what happens to Victoria? It wipes her out completely, Marcus said flatly. Apex's stock valuation drops to zero in 5 seconds. Every loan guarantee she signed with corporate collateral will default instantly. The banks will seize her personal assets, her accounts, and her investment portfolios. She will be utterly ruined, and Julian Mercer will be left holding stolen code that locks itself forever. Silence fell over the server room. The low hum of the servers suddenly felt like a ticking clock. Marcus, I said slowly, if I execute this protocol, what happens to the rest of the company? What happens to Sophia and the team? I've already mapped that out, Marcus answered calmly. The protocol allows you to form a new independent holding entity, Vance Technology. You can transfer all employment contracts over immediately with full back pay guarantees. The team stays safe. Only Victoria and Julian take the hit. She's presenting the merger with Mercer Tech at the National Tech Summit on Thursday, Sophia added, her voice quiet. She invited the entire tech press. She's planning to announce that you retired due to health reasons. Retire? I laughed softly, a cold, bitter sound. She really thought I would just sit in the background and let them steal everything. Ethan, I need your explicit authorization, Marcus said, handing me an encrypted security token. Once we load your master key into the central node, there is no turning back. If you push that button, you are declaring war on your wife. She will lose her CEO title, her fortune, and her reputation in front of the entire industry. I looked down at my left hand. My silver wedding band caught the reflection of the blue LED lights from the server rack. 5 years of marriage, 5 years of loyalty, 5 years of building a dream together, all thrown away so she could chase prestige with a man who was using her. I reached down, pulled the silver ring off my finger, and set it lightly on top of the open founder contract. She chose Julian, I said, looking Marcus straight in the eye. She made her decision last night. Now I'm making mine. Are you sure about this, boss? Sophia asked softly. Do it, Sophia, I said, plugging the security token into her terminal interface. Load the master key into the primary server stack. Map the recall protocol directly to my administrative phone account. Sophia's fingers moved across her keyboard, locking the code into place. A green confirmation banner appeared on her monitor. Failsafe protocol armed. Waiting for executive trigger. It's ready, Sophia whispered, looking up at me. One tap on your phone and the entire network goes dark. Keep this completely quiet, I told both of them. Don't change your daily routines. Let Victoria have her meetings. Let her plan her grand announcement for Thursday. And what are you going to do? Marcus asked, closing his briefcase. I looked at the green glowing screen, my heart beating with steady, quiet focus. I'm going to attend the summit, I said. And I'm going to watch her turn on the stage. The main auditorium of the convention center hummed with excited voices. Blinding spotlights swept across the massive stage, illuminating a giant digital banner that read, Apex Innovations and Mercer Tech, the future of enterprise AI. I stood near the back exit, dressed in a plain charcoal suit, watching the crowd of investors, tech journalists, and board members fill the seats. In the front row sat Julian Mercer. He was wearing a tailored designer tuxedo, leaning back with a smug expression that barely disguised the nervous tension in his posture. Suddenly the house lights dimmed. Victoria walked onto the center stage, stepping into the spotlight with absolute confidence. The audience broke into loud applause. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," Victoria's voice boomed through the surrounding speakers, clear and authoritative. 5 years ago, Apex Innovations set out with a singular vision. Today I am proud to reveal the culmination of my personal work, Project Titan. A massive presentation screen behind her lit up, displaying complex system architecture diagrams and live performance metrics. "I created Project Titan to revolutionize cloud infrastructure," Victoria continued, pacing the stage with practiced grace. 4 years I managed every aspect of its design, pouring my soul into making this breakthrough possible. But a revolutionary platform requires visionary leadership to expand across global markets. She pointed toward the front row, smiling warmly. "That is why I am thrilled to announce our historic merger with Mercer Tech, led by my brilliant partner, Julian Mercer." Julian stood up, turning to wave at the crowd as camera flashes exploded around him. He caught my eye across the long hall for a split second, tossing me a sharp, mocking grin before turning back to the stage. "Together," Victoria proclaimed, "Mercer Tech and Apex Innovations will deploy Project Titan across North America, Europe, and Asia." Julian's strategic brilliance has unlocked opportunities that were previously unimaginable. I felt a cold breeze from the open hallway doors behind me, but my hand remained completely steady in my coat pocket. "Now, I know many of you are asking about my co-founder," Victoria said, her tone suddenly shifting into a gentle, rehearsed sweetness. "My husband, Ethan Vance." The auditorium quieted down as her face appeared on the giant side monitors, showing an expression of tragic concern. "Ethan has been a quiet companion on this journey," she continued, looking directly into the primary camera lens. "However, building a global tech giant requires an intensity that not everyone is suited for. Today, Ethan has officially stepped down and retired from all active operations at Apex Innovations." Faint whispers rippled through the rows of audience members around me. "Ethan fought bravely behind the scenes," Victoria added smoothly, wiping away an imaginary tear. "But his health and peace of mind must come first. He has willingly surrendered his executive voting power to allow Julian and me to guide this company into a new era. We wish him a peaceful, quiet retirement away from the industry." The room erupted into polite applause. Up on stage, Victoria looked radiant, bathing in the admiration of the tech world, completely convinced she had successfully rewritten our history. Julian walked up the stage steps, grabbing a wireless microphone to join her at the center podium. "Thank you, Victoria," Julian said, his voice echoing over the speakers. "I want to personally guarantee our investors that the transition of Project Titan's master source code into Mercer Tech servers is already complete. To prove it, we are launching a live, real-time enterprise demonstration right now across every registered device on this stage." On cue, 12 high-end demonstration tablets mounted on pedestals along the front of the stage lit up simultaneously. Each screen displayed the live processing feed of Project Titan, running off the primary network node. "Look at those speed metrics," Julian cheered, gesturing toward the stage monitors. "This is absolute perfection." I pulled my right hand out of my coat pocket and looked down at my phone screen. The black background displayed a single, glowing red input line. "Enter master override key." I unlocked the admin portal using my private biometric scan. A secondary prompt popped up over the network dashboard. "Failsafe protocol, section 9 ready. Trigger recall?" I looked back up at the stage. Victoria was laughing at a joke Julian made into the microphone, her face glowing with pride and vanity. She had taken 5 years of my life, written me off as a weak liability, and presented my life's work to her ex-fiancé as a gift. "You really thought I was just an engineer, Victoria?" I whispered to myself. My thumb hovered over the glowing red screen button. "Let's see how well your new company runs without the foundation," I said quietly. I tapped the screen. The input field turned bright green, displaying a final confirmation code. "Recall executed. System override active." Across the stage, the massive digital screens flickered once, twice, and then went completely dark. The silence inside the grand auditorium was deafening. Every giant screen on stage flashed bright, blinding crimson. 4 words painted the darkness in harsh white letters. "Recall protocol activated. Invalid IP rights." "What is this?" Julian yelled, his voice cracking loudly into the open microphone. He tapped frantically at the tablet screen on the main podium. "What happened to the system network?" "Victoria, fix this immediately." Victoria's face turned ghostly pale under the bright stage lights. It's just a minor server glitch. Everyone, please remain calm. The 12 demonstration tablets simultaneously emitted a sharp, continuous warning chime. Up on the main display, thousands of lines of terminal code began deleting themselves in real time. Project Titan was wiping its operational footprint clean off every Mercer Tech server across the globe. A wave of loud shouts erupted from the front rows. Journalists scrambled to take photos of the red screens, while institutional investors pulled out their phones in total panic. Suddenly, Victoria's phone rang loudly over her microphone. She reached into her pocket, her hands shaking uncontrollably as she looked down at the bright screen. It was a bank alert. Then another rang. Then another. A rapid avalanche of text messages and priority calls flooded her screen. No, 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 Victoria whimpered, her polished composure shattering instantly. This can't be happening. Julian grabbed her by the shoulder, his face twisted in rage. Victoria, my server connections in London are dead. What did you do? The banks are freezing my acquisition credit line. I don't know, she shrieked, pulling away from him. My personal accounts are locked. Apex's main operating fund just dropped to zero. Fix it. Julian roared, shoving the silent microphone into her hands. Fix it right now or I am ruined. Victoria didn't answer him. She dropped the microphone, spun on her high heels, and fled down the stage steps toward the side exit. Julian stood alone under the flashing red lights, surrounded by screaming investors and flashing news cameras. I turned around slowly and walked out into the spacious, marble-tiled lobby. The cool air felt clean and refreshing. I stood near the floor-to-ceiling glass doors, waiting patiently with my hands folded in front of me. Within 10 seconds, the heavy double doors smashed open. Victoria sprinted out into the lobby, her hair disheveled and her eyes wild with complete terror. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw me standing there. Ethan, she screamed, rushing across the polished marble floor toward me. Ethan, you have to fix it. The servers are completely down. Our company is dying on live television. It isn't our company anymore, Victoria, I said, my voice steady and quiet. What are you talking about? She yelled, grabbing my suit jacket with both hands. Her nails dug into the fabric. Did Julian's engineers corrupt the data? Did we get hit by a virus? Tell me what password to put into the main system terminal. I reached out and gently unclasped her fingers from my jacket, stepping back to create a clear boundary between us. There is no virus, I replied, looking directly into her wide, bloodshot eyes. I triggered Section 9 of our founding agreement, the fail-safe protocol. Victoria blinked, her chest heaving as she tried to process my words. Section 9? What does that mean? It means I revoked the intellectual property license for Project Titan, I said plainly. You transferred our trade secrets to Julian Mercer without board authorization. You breached the core charter. The system recognized the unauthorized breach and pulled the software back to its sole creator. You pulled the software back? She stammered, her voice dropping to a panicked whisper. Ethan, the bank sent me an emergency freeze notice. My credit cards were declined. My stock options are locked. That's standard procedure, I said, pulling a thick set of legal documents from my inner coat pocket. The moment the recall protocol executes, all corporate assets under the Apex umbrella are immediately sequestered by federal authority. I stepped forward and handed the heavy stack of paper to her. What is this? She asked, her hands shaking so violently she nearly dropped the pages. That is a federal court injunction, I explained. It was signed less than 30 minutes ago by federal corporate magistrate Judge Harrison Cole. It legally strips you of all administrative authority over Apex Innovations. Furthermore, it freezes every physical asset, vehicle, building, and bank account tied to our corporate structure pending a full corporate fraud investigation. Victoria stared down at the bold black ink on the front cover. Judge Harrison Cole? You took me to a magistrate? Marcus did, I corrected her. Sophia provided the exact server logs showing your illegal midnight data transfers to Mercer Tech. Judge Cole verified the signatures on the original charter and signed the order immediately. Ethan, please? Victoria sobbed, dropping the papers onto the marble floor and falling to her knees in front of me. She reached up, trying to grab my hand. We can fix this. We're married. We built this together. We didn't build this together, I said, looking down at her without a trace of anger. I built the platform in a quiet room while you planned how to trade it for Julian's approval. You told the world tonight that I was a tired husband who retired. You tried to throw me away. I was doing it for our future, she lied desperately, tears streaming down her makeup. Julian offered us global scale. I was going to share everything with you once the merger went through. You surrendered my voting rights in a contract at 2 a.m, Victoria, I reminded her softly. You handed my life's work to a man who couldn't even run his own firm. Look back at the stage. Where is Julian right now? Victoria looked back toward the open auditorium doors. Through the glass, we could see Julian Mercer surrounded by federal agents and process servers handing him subpoenas for industrial espionage. He wasn't looking for her. He was trying to save himself. He lied to me, Victoria whispered, her face pale as snow. He told me he had the capital. He used you to steal my system because he was bankrupt, I said. And you let him because you thought I was too weak to stand up for myself. Ethan, please don't do this, she begged, looking up at me with absolute desperation. I have nothing left. My personal accounts are frozen. The house, the car, everything is tied to Apex. You have your clothes, Victoria, I said quietly, stepping around her toward the main glass exit of the convention center. And you have your freedom at least until Judge Cole's hearing on Tuesday. Where am I supposed to go? She screamed after me, her voice echoing off the tall marble walls. Ethan, answer me. I stopped at the heavy glass doors, looking out into the bright afternoon sunlight. Call Julian, I said softly. See if he has a room for you. I pushed open the door and stepped out into the open air, leaving the noise of the summit far behind me. 3 weeks passed like a blur of quiet productivity. The glass office suite of my new company, Vance Technology, overlooked the downtown skyline. It was bright, peaceful, and entirely free from corporate posturing. Sophia and Marcus were already setting up our main development floor down the hall, having brought over our entire original software team without losing a single day of salary. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was Marcus calling from the legal office down the street. Ethan, did you check the morning business news? Marcus asked over the line. Not yet, I replied, opening my browser. Did the SEC finish their initial review? Worse for them, Marcus said, a rare trace of humor in his voice. Mercer Tech went into total forced liquidation an hour ago. Federal agents raided Julian's primary data center in London last night for corporate espionage and security fraud. He's facing 5 counts of trade secret theft. And Julian? His board stripped his title before noon yesterday, Marcus said. He tried to blame Victoria, claiming she tricked him into accepting compromised data, but Sophia's timestamp server logs completely destroyed his defense. He's looking at significant federal prison time. What about Victoria's legal standing? I asked, looking out the large window. Her personal accounts are officially depleted, Marcus answered calmly. The court authorized the emergency asset forfeiture to settle Apex's unpaid supplier contracts. She's completely broke, Ethan. Her defense attorney just called me, asking if you'd agree to meet with her before the final divorce filing. Tell him she can come up, I said. Let's finish this today. 10 minutes later, the frosted glass door of my office swung open. Victoria stepped inside. She wore a simple dark sweater and worn jeans, looking nothing like the polished, ruthless CEO who had stood on the summit stage 3 weeks ago. Her eyes were red, dark circles carved under them, and her trembling hands clutched a crumpled paper folder. Ethan, she whispered, stopping near the edge of my desk. Her voice was cracked and hollow. Sit down, Victoria, I said quietly, gesturing to the chair across from me. She pulled the chair back and sat down stiffly. Your front desk receptionist. She used to work for us at Apex. She wouldn't even look at me when I walked through the lobby. She works for Vance Technology now, I said. Everyone from the core team does. Victoria let out a shaky breath, tears pooling in her eyes instantly. Ethan, please, you have to help me. The federal prosecutors are threatening to charge me as a co-conspirator in Julian's corporate theft case. My legal team says I'm facing up to 10 years if the IP recall stays in effect. You gave him my source code, Victoria, I said, keeping my voice soft and steady. You authorized the server transfers personally over 3 consecutive nights. He tricked me, she cried out, leaning across the desk, her hands desperate and pleading. Julian told me we were creating a global powerhouse. He swore his firm had $80 million in overseas backing. I only did it because I thought it would make us unstoppable. You didn't do it for us, I replied, looking directly into her eyes. You did it for your own ambition. You wanted the applause, the headlines, and the prestige. You looked at 5 years of my loyalty, my labor, and my trust, and you decided it was worth less than Julian Mercer's hollow promises. Victoria wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, her shoulders slumping in total defeat. He won't even answer my phone calls, Ethan. The moment the accounts were frozen, he blocked my number and told his lawyers to throw all the blame on me. He abandoned me. I know, I said gently. Julian was never your partner, Victoria. He was a sinking ship, and you threw away your own lifeboat just to stand on his deck. What am I supposed to do? She sobbed, dropping her head into her hands. I have no money left. The bank seized the house yesterday. The luxury car was repossessed this morning. My reputation in the industry is completely destroyed. Nobody will hire me, Ethan. I have nothing. I reached into my desk drawer, pulled out a neat stack of legal documents and laid them flat between us. This is our final divorce and asset settlement, I said, sliding a pen across the mahogany wood. Marcus drafted it this morning. Victoria looked up, her tear-stained eyes scanning the top page. What does it say? It states that you surrender all historical equity claims to Apex Innovations and Project Titan, I explained clearly. In exchange, I will file a formal legal declaration with Judge Harrison Cole stating that you were misled regarding Mercer Tech's financial standing. That declaration will clear you of criminal conspiracy charges. Victoria gasped softly, hope flickering in her eyes for a brief moment. You would do that for me? I am doing it so I can close this chapter forever, I corrected her firmly. Read the remaining terms, Victoria. You walk away with 0 corporate shares. You receive 0 alimony. Every personal debt, credit line, and legal fee you incurred with Julian remains strictly yours. You leave with your personal clothes and nothing else. She stared at the document, her hand hovering over the pen. I'll be starting over with absolute 0, Ethan. You will be starting over with your freedom, I said, looking at her without an ounce of hatred or regret. Which is far more than you gave me when you tried to strip my name off my own creation. Victoria bit her lip, her tears falling onto the crisp white paper. She picked up the pen with trembling fingers. I really was foolish, wasn't I? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. You built everything and I thought I was the one holding the power. Power comes from what you build, Victoria, I said quietly. Not from what you take from others. She pressed the pen to the paper and signed her name on the bottom line of each page. She closed the folder, slid it back to my side of the desk and stood up slowly. Goodbye, Ethan, she whispered, looking at me one last time with deep, overwhelming regret. Goodbye, Victoria, I replied. She turned around and walked out of the office, her head bowed as the frosted glass doors clicked shut behind her. I picked up the signed settlement papers, placed them into my briefcase and closed my laptop screen. The quiet hum of the office floor outside was filled with the voices of my team, talking enthusiastically about our new system launch. Sophia walked by my window, giving me a bright thumbs up as she headed into the main server room. I stood up, adjusted my coat, and walked out into the warm, bright morning air, ready to build a future that belonged entirely to me.